This week we're good. What's nice is we only really have one chapter to go through, which I like. Some weeks, obviously, we have a tremendous amount to get to, but this one's nice. We're going to be talking about competitive advantage now, because as we're talking, even this is an operations and supply chain, but we really have to start with a strategy. But before we have a strategy, if we don't have an advantage in it, we've got to make sure we're going to survive. Um, strategy, competitive advantage is driven by customer needs. It's not driven by necessarily what we want, though hopefully the two are aligned. But when you think of some of the great products that have failed, Sony Betamax, which we'll talk about in class, um, it's still driven by what the customer wants and needs. There are no two. It's important to also understand that no two think of them, they're competitors, and we think of them together, but you couldn't find any more different organizations and how they're run, their organizational structure, and so forth. Both are immensely successful, but they're very different. Different mission, different values, different vision, but both are successful. But again, the competitive advantage should be hard to emulate, should be hard to duplicate, but you also have to have a strategy and a plan. Can't go into business without a strategy or plan. I remember when I was working for a nursery. It was called Green Arrow Nursery. This was a $14 million a year nursery. Actually, it was $12 million. And Home Depot moved in, and everybody was freaking. And I remember we actually had a strategy meeting. And we said, look, Home Depot has great prices, but they really don't have our service. We had a lot of qualified nurserymen. We had pest control advisors. We really had better people in the nursery side of it. So we bulked up on it. I mean, we didn't take a step back. We became even more aggressive. So when it came to things like drip irrigation, well, we went and got commercial drip irrigation to sell. Home Depot just had a cheap homeowner brand. So what happened is some of the competitors were Builders Emporium, Ollie's, and they decided to kind of out Depot. So what they said is, well, we're going to cut we're going to be thin as well. So they cut their staff. They had no customer service, where before at least they had some customer service. So they, in a sense, tried to out Depot, and they got annihilated. They went out of business real quick. Home Depot, that was competitors for us, for Green Arrow. So what happened is Home Depot came and wiped out our competitors. We didn't compete with Home Depot because if you wanted service, you went to Green Arrow. If you just wanted cheap stuff, you went to Home Depot. So we both flourished, and we were a $15 million nursery. We actually went up $3 million a year after Home Depot moved in, because we had a strategy, we had a plan, and we knew what we were going to implement. It is important to understand that the basis of this is quality. Quality is the basis for almost all competitive advantage. The higher the quality, the higher the profits. So, for instance, Home Depot was able to offer a higher value because they were offering the same products at a lower price. Where we added value was having better service. So our quality was our service. Their quality was their pricing, if that makes sense. We think about it. Why do people love In-N-Out? The quality of the food. What happened to Chipotle? Chipotle had, I don't know who they were getting their products from, but all of a sudden they didn't taste as good, and they're having problems with salmonella and other things. Now it's really crushed their business. Meanwhile, you ask anybody, would you rather go to McDonald's? Would you rather go to Jack in the Box, or would you rather go to In-N-Out? And they only serve, think about it, they serve burgers, they serve fries, and they serve drinks. That's it. But these are there are different elements for providing quality. You can provide quality through service, like Green Arrow did. You can think of Nordstrom's. They provide it through service. You can also provide quality through cost, which is really what Walmart does. Walmart offers, they don't have different products, they have the same products, but they're able to do so at a reduced price for the consumer. That increases the quality. There's differentiation. So when you think of, when was the last time you saw an Apple product on sale? Because they have unique products that people are willing to pay for more for. And then there's the people element. And what I gave an example, I'm going to say 10, 15 years ago, we did an experiment where we got these people these gift cards, and I think they were $30 each. And the idea was that two people go out to dinner, and then we had this huge list that they can go out to dinner with. All we required was the receipts. And what we noticed is that we gave people 10. And this is Southern California. So, for instance, there is not a good Mexican restaurant. There are a lot of good Mexican restaurants. There's a lot of good sushi places. There's a lot of good Italian places. What was interesting was that most people picked one restaurant at least 5 of those 10 times. And you kind of ask yourself, why? It can't just be the food, because we got good food all over the place. What it really came down to was the service. There was something that they felt attached to that particular restaurant. And so it became the people. Whether or not they'd say, oh, I just love, let's say, the Outback. Well, really, they loved that Outback, and they loved it because of those waiters and waitresses. That's what made it special. The food was good, but there's good food everywhere. It can also be disadvantage if your people aren't good. But we talked about in class how it's amazing when it comes to these things. Like, there's an islands that's in La Jolla, which is always fantastic to go to. The La Jolla the Islands restaurant in Foothill Ranch sucks. It's always bad. We have somewhere the Best Buy in Costa Mesa is fantastic. The Best Buy in Yorba Linda is horrible. So it's interesting that it goes by, it's that dependent. And really, we don't shop at Best Buys everywhere. We shop at the one near our house. We go to the islands near our house. We go to whatever near our house. So that's our scope. With service, it's one thing that's important to understand with service, though, is it's more, in all honesty, it doesn't start with the customer. It actually starts with the employee. There is no business where the customer is more loyal to the business than the employees. So if the employees aren't loyal, customers will not be. It just never happens. So there are other elements of when they talk about quality, innovation, and it's about performance, not just price when it comes to innovation. It's interesting that 3M, their goal is 25% of their total revenues need to come from products that are less than 5 years old. That pushes the innovation, always making new things, making things better, the continual push for innovation. Then there's the element of time. They talk about 2 things of cycle time. Cycle time is either when a customer orders a product to when he delivers it, and that's one of the things that people love about Amazon. I can order it, and I get it in 2 days. That's one cycle time. Another type of cycle times they talk about by the initiation of a new product. This is one of the things that Samsung does a tremendous job. If someone comes out with new features on a phone, for instance, or new features on a product, TV, they're able to copy it, emulate it, and incorporate it into their own TVs very, very quickly. That operational excellence is why it's a low-cost leader. They're not really known for their innovations per se. Sony is, Apple is, and I'm not saying it's not an innovative company per se, but their bread and butter is their low-cost element of it. I mean, they're able to produce, when I remember looking at, was at the store, and there was like 63-inch TVs, and everybody was like, at the time, $1,400, $1,500. Theirs were $900. How are they? And they had the same features. In fact, they made the screens. They actually made the LCD screens at the time. So, as we're evaluating these things, we also have to evaluate the fact that in order to make decisions, important thing to understand is in order to make decisions, we have to have good data. So we have to have good data, and we have good interpretations of the data. We can't get into subjective arguments. And what a subjective argument, it's kind of like saying, if you get a bunch of people say, who's the greatest soccer player of all time? You got people my age are going to say, Pele, that guy was amazing. He innovated the game. You have people that say, you have different generations, and there is obviously no right answer. They're all great, and it's just who you like. Who's the greatest actor? Who's the prettiest? Who's the most handsome actor? Who's the prettiest actress? And those are subjective. There is no right or wrong answer. So this is why we need to have data, be able to interpret the data and not skew it with our own personal opinion. If we're making if someone says I'm going with my gut, then tell them to get some Pepto-Bismol or some Tums or something for their stomach, because I don't want decisions made by the gut. we need to, there's a need to measure these things. So this is why the data is important. Remember we talked about if I'm on a diet, how do you know if the diet's any good? You have to go by a scale. It could be my measurement like around my waist. Did he lose weight there? It may be both. But you can't say a diet's good or bad or how well it's working without measurement of before, after, and what you expected. So if I expected to lose 10 pounds and I lost 12, I exceeded my expectation. If I only lost 8, well, I didn't exceed my expectation. If I hit 10, I met my expectation. And then you have to tweak the fact where maybe was the expectation wrong. But they go by measurements, and we have to be able to incorporate this. That is a lot of the supply chain elements. And supply chain, again, is not just the element of manufacturing. That's a part of it. But there's other things involved as far as measurement, customer satisfaction. It goes from the raw goods all the way to the end user, and that is the entire supply chain and everything in between, including after the purchase. When you're done with when somebody buys something, you're not done. How well do you take care of the product? How well do you monitor the product? So you can see this entire cycle for it. But in order to even start, we have to have strategy. It all starts with strategy. And we have to have a plan. This usually revolves around company mission, company vision, and company values. There are 2 activities involved with it. There's the development aspect, which is the development of these things, the development of the mission, development of the values, development of the vision, and then there's the implementation. In class, I'm going to show you a few different companies because there is not one, and I'm even going to pick charities. I have some charities I want to show you: Salvation Army, Goodwill, so forth. These are all good charities, and one is not better than another. So I want you to understand that. But they each have their own mission, and as a consequence, they've developed a strategy to achieve that mission. The vision is kind of like where we want to be in the future. Mission is kind of like where we are now. The vision is what we want to be in the future. Whereas the values determine really of who we are. What do we define? Values are really the guiding principles. It's interesting because values can be one of 2 things. And from 1979 to 1999, Bernie Marcus and Arthur Blank, in fact, in there I'll show you, they had a pyramid, and they truly believe this. The CEOs in the bottom, and actually the employees were on top. Bernie said to me, "No customer is going to shop here because I'm the CEO. They are going to shop here whether or not you take care of them or you don't." And he's right. Remember we talked about a little bit about how Best Buy is one's good and one's bad. How well did the one take care of the customer and how well did the other? Well, the one that didn't, we could say is a bad Best Buy. The one that took care of the customer, we say is a good Best Buy. And from 79 to 99, they had this inverted pyramid, and it was really important to everyone. That was a guiding principle. Problem was they left, and then Robert Nardelli took over, and he added customers on top. And what he did was that they slashed payroll, they slashed the sales folk. Home Depot, which was a synonym for great customer service, became a joke. We talk about it used to be a do-it-yourself company, now it's a find-it-yourself company, that trying to find good people in there is just an act of God. And that has become more of a marketing tool than reality. They do not live by those principles. And because Bernie believed that if I take care of my employees, they will take care of the customer. So he believed the customer was most important, but he believed the only way to show that was to take care of his employees. So interesting principles. But as we're developing our strategy, we have to evaluate both the environment in which we're operating, and we have to be honest about an internal environment. What are we good at? What are we not good at? If you decide, I'm going to open a restaurant, what am I going to serve? If my cook's not good at Italian food, probably shouldn't cook Italian food. What's he good at? So you can see you want to be able to find your niche so that you will be good at it. You have to evaluate the environment. If you're surrounded by 4 Italian restaurants, maybe opening an Italian restaurant is not a good idea there. What are your internal skills? What do you have competitive advantage? Strategy. During the strategic development, you have to develop a strategy. You have to develop action plans. And the hard part comes in the implementation. And that's when the management element becomes so important. Good managers, in all honesty, are hard to find. Good managers. Remember I talked about in the first day of class, more companies fail because of bad management rather than bad leadership. And it's translating these things into actionable items that could be measured. So later on, so we're translating it, we're measuring it, and then later on we can change and improve it. So then we start that whole supply chain and operations and that whole value element of it. The value chain will evolve. That's all I want right now. Thank you very much.